Call this town council meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is our last regular council meeting of this council year. We have one more meeting, which will be our annual meeting, where we'll just be reviewing the budget. But otherwise, this is the end of what has been a very active year for this council. And Quinn, thank you for joining us halfway through to finish up Irene's term. Let me first ask our treasurer, Carlo, to give us a financial report.
Thank you, Barney. So in your materials, the financial report through March 31st, 2026 can be found. So that's 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year. And as of the 31st of March, we received about 77% of our revenue budgeted for the year. So our annual revenue budget is about $5 million, and we've received $3.87 million of that. On the expenditure side, we've expended about 73% of the budgeted operating expenditures. So that's $2.87 million out of budgeted $4 million. And then in the capital expenditure category, we've spent about 72% of our $853,000 budget in that area. And those capital expenditures, again, are things like asphalt and concrete, park improvements, town office improvements, technology. So all of that, just to summarize, we're on track to complete our fiscal year comfortably within the budget. There are lots of details in the package, and if anybody's got any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Anybody have any questions about the? We're all on track. Good. Thank you very much. Good. Thank you, Carla. Okay. We now turn to the town manager's report. Go ahead, Todd.
Thanks, Barney. I'll review or highlight some of the initiatives that have been undertaken by staff over the past month. Staff assisted with responding to the 2026 state housing bills, which we'll discuss the status of later this evening. We also attended the speed camera kickoff meeting. The application for the speed camera is scheduled to be submitted to the SHA in approximately 3.5 weeks. We had met for an initial business procedural meeting about 3.5 weeks ago, and I was under the understanding that the SHA application would be made by this time. However, they clarified that was the timeline for the actual kickoff of the project. SHA approval, once application is made, could take another 2 to 3 months, but we will apply pressure for a quick turnaround from the SHA, which has already indicated that they would approve a camera on the north side of Bradley to monitor westbound speeds. Moving forward, Elevate, the contractor, the speed camera contractor, will provide weekly updates to the town. And by tomorrow, we should receive or have a project schedule, including milestones and dates that I will share with the council. Staff also communicated with the Montgomery County Department of Transportation about the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail Phase 2 construction, as well as the town's parking meter removal and parking space markings on Willow Lane. We recently learned that the project, as designed, as field engineered, will remove an additional town parking meter on Willow, leaving 3 meters in place rather than the original 5. Dave is working with the county's Department of Transportation now to reconfigure the 3 metered spaces that remain based on the revised design, and Dave can answer questions or provide updates if you need them. Staff also discussed the shielding of the lights on the Capitol Crescent Trail with the Purple Line Transit Partners. There's been a development just today. I spoke with Dan Norman with PLTP, and he had his engineers do some field work to identify the lights that we want shielded, and has provided some pictures and notes from their engineer that I've received and will review. I again inquired. I spoke to Dan this afternoon, and I again inquired about how to proceed with the shielding of these lights. And he is very responsive, I would say, to the town's concerns. He understands them, and he indicated to me that he believes that having a metal fabricator fabricate a lampshade, if you will, or a metal shroud that would be affixed to the lamp pole, the light pole, and extend up and shield the light from behind or in front, as the case may be, that covers the back of the luminaire versus having the luminaire retrofitted or even buying a new luminaire with a pattern shield that is basically diffuses the light would be the better option. It wouldn't affect the warranty issues of the lamp that has already been installed, and it's likely to move forward more quickly. So he promised to have the PLTP team look into this alternative, more simplistic approach, and agreed to ask his engineers to get started tomorrow, and he'll follow up in 2 weeks. So it's a positive development in this issue that we've been dealing with for a while. And we hope to, have something to potentially show the council within a month or so before these lights are energized. As a segue to that, he in a recent call that I had with Dan, he said it's unlikely that the PLTP will take over interim maintenance of the Capitol Crescent Trail if the county doesn't take ownership of the trail when it opens, which we understood would be about a year before the Purple Line starts revenue service. Dan's in discussions with the County Department of Transportation about the county taking ownership once the trail opens and not waiting until revenue service begins, and indicated that if the county is not amenable to that, it's likely the trail won't open until the end of 2027 when the Purple Line starts revenue service. But there's no reason the county shouldn't take ownership early. No access or rights of entry are needed by the Purple Line after that time to do any construction-related work. And so he believes, and it has indicated there's another meeting, a follow-up meeting he's having the end of this week, but he's already received sort of an interim agreement, if you will, from the county that they will take ownership of the trail once it opens, which will be approximately a year before, as I said, revenue service starts. Staff also communicated with the State Highway Administration, the Chevy Chase Club, about the retaining wall at Bradley Lane and Connecticut Avenue, and some complaints we've received about how that wall blocks sight lines for motorists seeing pedestrians in the crosswalk on the south side of that intersection to cross Connecticut Avenue. We've scheduled an on-site meeting for Wednesday of this week with SHA representatives, District 3 engineer, as well as some club representatives to talk about some options and alternatives for improving sight lines or otherwise modifying that intersection, potentially with crosswalk modifications or other means to ensure that motorists can see pedestrians in the crosswalk across Connecticut Avenue. Staff also submitted the final project and expenditure report for the town's ARPA grant, which we fully spent out this year. We also drafted proposed ordinances to amend town front yard hedge regulations and prohibit parking on certain sections of Rosemary Street, which will be discussed this evening. Staff also discussed Bradley Lane sidewalk widening and fire hydrant relocations, and Dave can give you an update about the fire hydrant relocations if you wish. We also prepared bids for landscaping and tree maintenance contracts. We discussed Climate and Environment Committee initiatives and responded to the committee's questions about native landscaping. We also developed plans in coordination with Tolbert, our arborist, to re-landscape certain public areas and intersections in town. We also continue to address issues, specifically ADA compliance with the Thornapple Path. I sent the council an update on that matter this afternoon. Essentially, John Lloyd, who's a staff member, who's the special projects manager for the town, spoke to a number of individuals who are ADA experts, including the associate director of the Mid-Atlantic ADA Center, and has referred to obviously ADA guidance on this issue, both U.S. Access Board technical guides and ADA standards for accessible design. And the design modifications we'll need to make to that gate and retaining wall in the Thornapple path were outlined in the email that I sent you this afternoon. Effectively, we need to modify the gate itself to swing a certain way, to have a handle, to be a certain height above the ground. And we need to modify the retaining walls to create lay-by areas, if you will, to allow a wheelchair to position itself so that it can actually open the gate. The individual in the wheelchair can open the gate and get through the gate. So that proposed scope of work is included in the email that I sent you this afternoon. And I just wanted to get some concurrence from the council as to how to proceed with that, whether we go with the scope of work with the current gate or we can look for alternatives to this. The potential cost of the modifications is around $20,000, both with the stonework and with the gate modifications. We could look for potentially less costly alternatives, but we would need to retain a landscape architect with ADA accessibility experience in order to figure out all of our options and alternatives rather than just looking at modification of the existing improvements.
If I could recommend, why don't we add that as a discussion item under E after we finish the other business, the council discussions? That'd be right?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Staff also continued the FY27 budget preparation and organized and attended the budget work session with the council. We continued election 2026 planning. We also assisted with planning for county council and executive candidate forums, and we provided project support to town committees. And that concludes the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from my colleagues? Okay. Todd, is there any update on the striping of Bradley Lane that you can offer?
Yes, there is. Absolutely. I reached out to Jonathan Dwyer, who's the District 3 engineer for the SHA, which is Montgomery County. And he said there's a Bradley Lane restriping and signage improvement project that the SHA has agreed to do based on town request. Restriping will effectively shift traffic away from the Bradley Lane sidewalk on the north side. And the signage improvements include improved signage to restrict trucks from using Bradley Lane. The work is ready to be assigned by SHA. However, they're figuring out who will do the work. I was told by Jonathan Dwyer that they need to go through a construction contract they have versus a maintenance contract due to the limitations on the project scope in the latter, meaning the maintenance contract, which calls for restriping up to 1,000 linear feet. Construction contracts include restriping greater or longer than that. And so they'll have to use a construction contract for that purpose. Jonathan indicated that they hope to be done this summer with that project if they can find a contract that doesn't require federal approval, which would take about 3 to 9 months, which would greatly push that project farther into the end of this year or early next. And I believe the reason they need federal approval for some of their contracts is because they receive grants or subsidies from the federal government for some of this work. And they're hoping to find a contract that doesn't require that, and they can move forward with this project relatively quickly. But they're still looking for that. And he's asked his construction team to try to identify a contract that would allow them to move forward more quickly with the street restriping and signage improvement project, specifically the restriping. But that's the update on that.
All right, thank you. Let's hope that's the case. We just observed that anytime anything has to be done that involves approvals from any official agency, it just takes forever. I am disappointed that the Elevate is taking as long as they're taking to submit their application. I trust we can indeed put pressure and get support. In fact, I think we also may want to engage our state delegation if necessary to get us as SHA to approve the camera promptly so that we can still meet what we had told the residents on Bradley we hoped would be the schedule, which is to have an active camera sometime this summer or by September at the latest. So yeah, let's keep pushing. And we'll, as I say, I suggest we take up the question of the ADA, having to modify the gate to meet ADA compliance as a new item E under Roman numeral 3 in our agenda. Okay, thank you. And thank you for all the work, Todd, and for your staff's work. With that, let me open it up for public comments. This is an opportunity for anyone who wishes to speak on any topic. We on the council would like to hear from anybody. But it does not take up the variances. Anybody who wishes to speak on either of the two variances, you will have your opportunity subsequently when we take those up under Roman numeral 2 of this agenda. But on any other topic, please, if anyone wishes to make a comment, this is now your opportunity. Please, and use the microphone and identify yourself, and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Hi, my name's Linda Geiser. I'm the co-chair this year of the Climate and Environment Committee, and just heard your announcement that this is your last meeting of the year, and the next meeting will be devoted to budget. The recycling subcommittee has been researching this year all that we can learn about recycling. We've had visits to Montgomery County recycling and to waste management recycling, and we've written a summary of what we've learned that might be useful for the town council when reviewing the upcoming renewal for the contract with waste management. And we were hoping to present that at the May meeting. So I'm looking to you for advice of how can we get that information to you? Should we wait until September or just
No, just to be
it
clear, we will have a May council meeting,
Oh, okay.
but it will be the new council after the election.
Oh,
See, the
I
council
see.
year goes from May to May.
Okay.
So the final meeting of a council year is the meeting on May 5th, 6th, I guess it is. And that will be of this council. And then the new council year starts in May with our regular council meeting in May. So you will still have your opportunity to make the presentation.
Okay, then my ask is, can you find us an agenda spot?
We certainly can.
And
Yes, I look forward to
let
hearing
us
from
know
you.
how much time we have.
Right. Good.
Okay, thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Allison Fox. I'm a resident. I live on Stanford Street, and I'm also a part of the committee, but I'm not going to talk about that tonight. I'd like to talk about something else. So we moved here 3 years ago, and since then we've been involved in a lot of committees. We've helped run a lot of activities, events, including the one yesterday on native plants, and we participated in many more. And even though we moved all the way from Bethesda after 25 years, I have to say we love it here. We're very, very happy. We're thrilled with the town council. But there's one thing that I want to raise that's been bugging me, and that I think is an essential benefit, one of the benefits of living in this town, but it's only offered to some of the residents, and that's the parking restrictions. So I feel very strongly, and I've talked to quite a few other people in the neighborhood, people with the stickers and people without, and they just agree with me that it would be better if everyone in the town had access to the parking. These are, public streets, and the way it's set up now, some people can park anywhere in the neighborhood and some people can't. And we're all one town, and I think that we should have access to it. And it seems odd to me that I can't park near Wisconsin, but I and anyone else or anyone with a sticker can park right on one of the streets near Connecticut and grab the bus there. So it seems a little odd to me, but more importantly, people park on the street. So what I would ask is that everyone in the town has stickers. Whether you decide to put restrictions everywhere or not would be up to you. But this way we would allow everybody who is a resident to have full access to the town. I know some people like to have restricted access, but there are two problems with this. One, I would raise that most of them, and I've driven by and walked by all of the areas, they have driveways. So they have the same ability to park off the street that everybody else does. If there is a case of a house that doesn't have a driveway, then I would advocate for them. Maybe there could be a special sign, which sometimes you see in cases for some people, and that would be fine. But it should be that everybody in the town is treated the same, in my opinion. So that's what I would actually advocate for. I know that everything's getting more busy in this town, actually. I know it's not infrequent that, but cars are, I'm on Stanford and there are cars on both sides of the street. So I have difficulty sometimes getting into my parking lot. I mean, into my driveway, because I always park in the driveway, or getting out. And I certainly can't park in front of my house because there's almost always a car there. So I think we're more and more, this is becoming a bigger problem in terms of the parking. But I don't think it should be residents that should be restricted. I think it would be better if we all did. Another benefit, I think, is a safety benefit. If everyone has stickers, we can identify who's in the town and who's not. Sometimes cars are left for multiple days. And if it's on a street that's not restricted and not a sticker, there's no way of knowing if that's a town resident who's leaving their car for multiple days or if it isn't. And if it isn't, there might be a reason to engage the town or even the police. But if it's someone with a sticker, we can figure it out easily by calling the town, making sure maybe they're just on vacation or something. But I think that's a safety reason. The other thing, it's a little disconnected, but I think it's still a safety issue, is we definitely have a problem, especially on between Maple and Ridgewood, of people not stopping at all at the stop signs and running through all the time. And I think it would actually be really beneficial for an education if we knew if those were town residents or not. And if they have the sticker, you can tell if they're town residents. And if it is, then that would make it easier to do an education campaign. If it isn't, then we can say something to outside people to help us find a way to stop that. So I think it's also a safety issue. So just generally in conclusion, I would ask you to really consider allowing any resident who's of this town to have the same access to the streets that we could all have. And I would be happy, if you have to engage in any way in a discussion about this, to come up with what you think are solutions. But that would be what I would ask you to consider tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Appreciate it. Okay. I see Susanna Montesmo, your hand is up. Would you like to?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry,
Sorry,
Susanna, could you please turn on your camera?
I did. Can you not see me?
Now we can see
Okay.
you.
All right, good. It just takes a second to engage. Sorry, I could not be there in person. I'm keeping my germs at home because nobody wants what I have right now. But I wanted to, first of all, thank both of the commenters before. And I appreciate the work that the recycling and everything that is going on. And I feel like I'm learning a lot from the listserv. And I also wanted to agree with Allison that I really think that everyone in the town should have a sticker. And I think she makes some really important points. So I think that was a very good point. I just wanted to thank the town council and the town staff for looking at the Thornapple Path issue. I know there was a lot of back and forth on the listserv about this. It's an issue I care about deeply. I used to have my mother and my mother-in-law, both of whom use wheelchairs, visiting me in the town, and they could never get through Thornapple Path. And it is an issue I work on in my day job at AARP in terms of ensuring access for people with disabilities. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate checking in with experts and making sure that everyone, regardless of ability, can use the sidewalks and paths throughout the town. So just thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions, comments anyone wishes to make at this time? Okay, we'll now proceed then with the variance discussions. The first one is of 7111 Ridgewood Avenue. Ron, do you want to lead us through the process that we undertake? And then I'll turn it over to Dave to start.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the variance request for 7111 Ridgewood Avenue. As of April 8, the town had not received any correspondence regarding that request, and Dave will please let us know if that's changed. The hearing will begin with presentation by the applicant, and the applicant can please note that the town council has had the opportunity to review the materials in advance. So please don't feel like you have to restate everything that's in there, but you're free to address what you'd like. After the applicant's presentation, the town council members will ask their questions of staff and/or the applicant. Following that, if there's anyone else attending the hearing tonight that would like to ask a question or make a statement in support or opposition, you'll have the opportunity to do so. Then the applicant will have the opportunity to rebut those comments. The record will close and the council will entertain a motion directing me to draft a decision, either approving or denying the request. Please note, if the request is approved, the decision's not final until it's written. So you can't get your permit until that's been written up, and that's a process that usually takes a week or two. So with that, we can turn to the applicant, and anyone who speaks tonight, please wait until you're identified by the mayor, and please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Dave, do you want to?
Sure. I did send you an email. We did get a letter supporting the request from the resident 7113 Ridgewood.
Okay, would the applicant like to make a brief statement? You're the applicant. Yes, please do. Identify yourself and address.
Hello, everybody. My name is Aparna Dubey, and I live on Ridgewood Avenue, 7111 Ridgewood Avenue. And we've been living in the town since 1992 when we bought the house. And in 2003, we renovated the house, and the architect, David Jones, he's also a Chevy Chase resident, but not in the town. He removed cover that we had over the basement steps to go downstairs. And since then, I've been renting the house because we've been living abroad, working abroad and all that. And now I'm finally back into the town. And what I'm finding is that ever since this was removed, we've been having like leaves pile up, water going into the house. And basically, when they built it in, 1927, they knew what they were doing. We actually need that to stop all of the water, coming into the house and the leaves piling up in the stairwell. And so the drain is down there. And so unless you're constantly watching and constantly, and these days with the weather, it's very hard to kind of keep up on it. I think earlier it was easier, and now it just seems to be, we're getting these extremes. I just wanted to put it back like where it belonged, like how it used to be. And I didn't realize I needed a variance for that, but obviously I do.
Thank you very much. Any questions of my colleagues about the request for the variance? No? Okay. Any questions from any residents regarding the variance request? All right. Close the record and turn it back to us for discussion. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. And frankly, I'd like to make a request, Carl, if you could raise it with the Land Use Committee. It strikes me that the committee should consider whether our town code should be changed to permit people to cover staircases that go down into the basement without having to come to us for a variance. It goes back to one of my early years on the council, but we went through the whole code and really tried to squeeze out a lot of things that just seemed unnecessary to ask people to come and ask permission for. There was a time when you could only build a front porch out 3 feet without having to get a variance. And we said, that's ridiculous. People can have front porches. And we said, 9 feet, it's a little more realistic. But this strikes me as a similar situation that at least ought to be fully considered and possibly a change in our code, because it's not clear to me why we should be having to have a variance to put a cover over an outdoor staircase going down into the basement. Yeah, and it's not material effectiveness side yard, so thank you. Okay, let's move now to the variance regarding 4105 Aspen Street. Dave, did you have any preliminary comments you wish to make, or should we just turn to the applicants?
Yeah, I did send you, we did get, I guess, 2 emails from the same resident saying that they objected to the approval of the variance. But I'm not sure, let me know if you have any questions about the methodology or how the town's setbacks are applied.
Now, let me ask the applicants to please step up and introduce themselves and make their request. Will you please go to the podium, please, and use the microphone?
I am Jim Enlow, the architect for my client, Sylvia Shari, and her husband, Max, and her daughters there, Benedicta. So you've seen the material. Basically, the issue, and I've got a model there that can explain things a little bit for you, and I can bring it around, that they currently have a 6x6 deck, and it's not large enough to put a table. And they have a family of 5. And during the good weather in the spring, summer, and fall, they'd like to be able to eat out, if possible, on the deck. And it's a raised deck because the kitchen and the dining room are just off at that same level. The project or the addition is screened both by the green arborvitae and deciduous trees on either side. And I believe there's some photos that were supported that came out just since the deciduous trees have grown. And so as a consequence, for the most part, nobody can see the addition. And when the trees are out, they're not going to be able to have much visibility of the adjacent properties. And if you would like to see the model, I can bring it up for you.
Would you like to see the model? Sure. I would, yeah, sure. Why don't you bring it down? Take a look at it. We went to the effort of creating it. We ought to at least give you respect of our having to look at it.
The client prefers to be able to build a retractable roof.
Could you go back to the microphone, please?
Or you can take it out. You can take it
Or you
out.
can take the microphone, but
You
you have
take
to
it
speak
out.
into a microphone. You can take the microphone
take it
out
out.
if you wish to.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. The client's preference is to have an enclosed deck with a retractable roof or a retractable awning. The fallback would be just to have a deck with a adjustable or retractable awning, but in both cases, we still need the same variance. The one deciduous tree here, the arborvitae here, and another one here. Now, the properties on the other side of the fence are down about 10, 15 feet. And some of the neighbors on this side were concerned about people on the deck being able to see in the second floor bedroom. It would be and it's about 30 foot, be no different than the side yard property, where it's less than about 20 feet. The same token, they would have to provide privacy for their own use in those bedrooms on either side of the property. So this is essentially the project.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
Why you can move that back to the side so. Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from my colleagues, either I'm sorry, your name again, sir? Jim Enlow? Okay, right. Or of Dave regarding any of our code requirements?
I mean, will we be able to engage Dave as we talk
Yes,
about this?
yes.
Because I do find it to be.
We are
very
able to engage
confusing.
Dave. We are able to ask questions that are
Yeah.
relevant to us to be able to address the question.
Right. And I should mention that I did call Dave earlier today to ask him questions to explain
Sure.
the calculations of the setback.
Do you wish to have Dave go over that?
Oh, no, he did explain it already.
You have one further comment?
Although no variances will be required by the county for this project, the reason for the variances is because of the unique shape of the lot. It's basically a triangular lot and with a very wide front. And this creates deeper setbacks on both the rear yard and the side yard. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from Carl? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want
Are
to
we
have a
asking
question?
questions? I'm sorry for the pursuit. Who are we asking questions of?
We can either ask
applicant?
questions of the applicant. We can also ask questions of Dave to explain things.
Okay, I guess I do have a question in terms of the hardship piece. Is there, when I walked past the house, walked with my dog, it appears that you have a covered balcony on that same first floor.
That's a sunroom. It's right next to my husband's office.
I'm sorry, if you're going to answer, could you please go and use the mic?
Just because there was like the explanation that there was no other covered balcony.
It's a sunroom and it's right off my husband's office. We cannot use it as a dining or whatever, like, leisure for the family because it's really into his office where he works from home sometimes. So that's why we were not considering it. While that balcony, right now it's really like a little square. We cannot use it for anything. And it's really off the kitchen living room. So it would be perfect. Because otherwise we would have to go all the way downstairs because the house is on a slope and there's just that patio. So thank you.
Thank you.
Carla, did you have anything?
This is probably a question for Dave to explain the setbacks with the geometry of the lot. I'm just not sure I quite understand how the setback lines are established. Is the plan north, is that a side? Is that considered a side setback? It's just the yeah, maybe that.
For this lot, it's triangular in shape. The town considers it to be a lot that doesn't have a rear property line.
Okay.
So it's a lot that comes to a point at the rear. So basically, there's a front property line, there's a side property line, and then both of the property lines along the east side of the property are considered to be side property lines. So there's a 10-foot rear yard or rear property line that is created in order to determine where the rear yard setback is measured from. And then there's a side yard setback from the side of the property on either side. So it has a very small rear yard and then in this case, very large side yards just because of the way the lot is platted.
Why don't you explain how the side setback is at 17 feet? Could you walk through how that was arrived at?
So in the town, side yard setbacks are based on a formula that calculates the width of the lot at the either 25 feet or the front established building line. And it applies that setback to the entirety of the lot in this case. And so in this case, the property is very wide at the front and it gets very narrow at the back. So the lot is 94.14 feet wide where we measure the setbacks.
Okay.
And so the required setback is 30% of that total,
I see.
which
Okay.
is 28.3 feet. And then 40% of that 28 feet is on one side and 60% is on the other side.
And 60% of that 28 feet is 17 feet. Is that
Is 17 feet.
okay?
And
And
then
that's
the-
what defines it.
And then the deck is allowed to project 3 feet into each of those. So the setback for the deck is 14 feet on one side and 8.3 on the other.
So thank you for explaining that. And, you know, that the side, because so many of our lots in the town are rectangular and the side setbacks are modest compared to what's here. Is the existing house already of a variance? Because it's only 9.36 feet from the property line.
Yeah,
So
the existing house was built prior to the adoption of
Okay.
these setbacks, so it's developmentally non-conforming. And then when a
Right.
variance was granted in 2006, it required setback variances for the addition to go over top of the existing house.
Okay. Last question, and I don't know that it's material, and this might be more of the applicant or the architect. Was there consideration for a geometry that is not square, but more rectangular so that it is not as close to the property on the west? And so rather than be right on the building edge, you know, start from where the existing deck is and go further east and out? Was that a consideration?
Was.
Okay. No, I just want to make sure that was considered. I don't know that it,
Please, you go back up to the.
thank you.
We looked at all options and I started off with the minimum size that you could have a table for 6 people and allow about 3 foot on either side for circulation. If we go further east, then we increase the side yard setback even more than it is. I started the deck on the west edge of the house. And we can't go much further west without it looking awkward and being more visible and closer to the neighbor on the west.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Sure.
No,
go ahead.
This is a question for Dave. When we spoke earlier today, I understood that the current deck is non-conforming from the rear setback.
This is the.
So that is true.
Okay, those lines.
Those
right there.
lines,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep. So yeah, for the rear yard setback, so the rear yard setback is calculated by taking the average of the lengths of the 2 side property lines, which for this case results in a chord that's drawn here, a chord that's drawn here, and that's averaged. That results in a lot depth of 132.7 feet. The required setback is 30% of that depth, which is 39.8 feet. And then the deck, which is this line that's here, is 39.8 feet from there. And then the deck can project 9 feet past that line and the roof can project 3 feet past that line by right. So the entirety of the existing deck plus about 10 feet of the existing house project into the current town rear yard setback.
Yeah, thank you.
While you're there, don't go. So in effect, what we're, the, the delta from where they were, this area right there is the increase into the setbacks, correct? So
So,
it's
so the existing deck is approximately here. So there's, about a 3-foot additional projection toward the rear property line. The projection on this side, it's the current deck is about inset about a foot from the edge of the existing house. So this side setback is fine, but this, I guess, is an additional projection into the rear setback. And then the portion of the deck that requires the variance is this portion, which is an additional projection into the side yard setback.
so really what they're asking is for us to allow them to build this triangle in effect into the setbacks.
Into the side, and then, everything, I guess this existing 6x6 deck was approved by variance in 2006, but the entirety of the expansion beyond that requires a rear yard setback variance.
There's two variances, and then the roof variance.
So this triangular piece is the side yard setback variance, but then the entirety of the deck, except for the piece that's already constructed, requires a rear yard setback variance, and the current deck is not covered, so the entirety of the roof requires a rear yard setback variance. The existing house prior to 2006.
Is it 6 or 16? 6 or 16?
I'm not sure what.
But never mind. I thought the addition was in 16.
The addition in 2016 is correct. Prior to that, this piece that is off the back that's sort of separated from this main portion of the house was a 1-story addition that was constructed prior to the adoption of the setbacks. So it was developmentally non-conforming.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more question.
Yeah, sure.
One more question. What is the distance from that little triangle to the back? The line, sorry, this line here. Line to the back.
It's 10.3 feet.
I guess, to me, in some ways, it's called a side setback, but it's almost like a rear setback in terms of its position against the other yards on the other side. Anyway, it's functioning.
Did you want
Just a quick note on the rear setback. The existing 6x6 deck had gotten the previous variance. We're going back only 3 more foot into the rear yard, and the justification is because of the unique topography of going down 1 story from the main living area where the kitchen and the living room is, and having an accessible space. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, Dave, going back to that little triangle that I talked about.
Yep.
On the point of the triangle closest to the right side of the property, looking from the thing. What is the distance from that point to the side yard?
So it's 10.3 feet from the point of that triangle to the side property line.
So it's 10 feet there.
Yep.
At the side, okay.
Any other questions, folks? Okay. Now let me open it up to residents. If any resident has a question or comment, please feel free to make it at this time. Yes, please come to the podium.
Hi, my name is Jessica Rosenberg. I live at 7704 Chatham Road. This is the house directly behind the house requesting the variance. And so I was like really nervous. I moved here 4 years ago with my husband and our two kids. They're 4 and 7 years old. And I'm the person who wrote in. So my concern is that the elevation and the proximity of the deck creates direct sight lines into our home and specifically into our children's bedrooms and our primary living spaces. So our neighbors were gracious enough to come over to our house. We invited them in and to come into the kids' bedrooms and everything and to see. And they did seem to express agreement that there's a material privacy issue here. So it's not really about whether there's a deck or not. I'm hearing all the conversation about it's just another 3 feet. It's really about converting a space into something that becomes regularly used. And it's an elevated gathering area with direct and reliable lines of sight into multiple spaces in our home. So the model, I think, suggests some more tree coverage and less elevation than exists in practice. And the tree coverage is partial and seasonal, and it really doesn't function as a reliable privacy barrier at this height. So our concern is really about what the design allows over time. So at this proximity, as we're talking, it's about 30 feet from our home, not our property, like our physical house. And at this elevation, just about 10 to 15 feet above the actual fence line. The privacy really shouldn't depend on vegetation, even seasonal vegetation or removable elements or how often the space is used. So the elevation, it also increases the transmission of sound into our home and our yard. And at this proximity and in height, it kind of feels like the more the deck is used, the more directly it degrades our ability to enjoy our home privately. So the configuration really changes how both properties function and not in an equal manner. So for these reasons, we don't support the variance. The proposal turns a private boundary really into a shared space because activity on the deck would have a direct line of sight into our home, again, into our two kids' bedrooms. And the privacy impact at the boundary isn't something I think that can be reliably mitigated through vegetation or simple screening. So,
Thank you. Are there any other comments? No, here, I see.
There's a hand up online,
I
Mr.
see
Mayor.
your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yep, I just wanted to speak in support of the variance. It seems like the setback, which already seems to my mind to be too great for the town, is particularly unfair here, given that it is based off of the front of the yard and there is a triangular shape. And so that seems really unfair to the owners of the house. I do think that things can be done to protect privacy. For example, in our house, Barney, you live right across the street from us, so you know this. We have plantation shutters to provide some privacy, in our front rooms. And it seems like having a 36 square foot deck is not tenable for a family of 5, and that people should be able to use their property. So I want to just speak in support of the variance.
Thank you. Okay, any other? Yes, sure.
Hi again. So we just want to use it as, a space where to eat outside and enjoy a backyard because we don't have one. Actually, it's just a small cement patio, which we are not using because it's really taking us to go the whole way around the house, which we chose the house because of the small amount of grass because, we didn't really want all the backyard, but still we want to keep the value of the house and a nice balcony where to eat outside. That would be nice. We're not having parties on a balcony. I want to make that clear. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and I will close the public hearing and turn it back to the 5 of us for deliberation. Let me open it up for any comments or thoughts that my colleagues have.
on the photographs that were taken, are they current? So the trees haven't fully leafed out yet. It's even, there's going to be more coverage than what's shown here once the trees fully leaf out. And where on the picture is the neighbor's window? You know, do we know? One here?
And the other one is behind the main.
Is behind this?
Yes.
Right. I have a question of ourselves.
Yeah.
Have we ever, and Ron or Dave can help here. Is there a condition that could be put on that says that there needs to be, a continued screening, or I don't know, continued screening, continued upkeep of the vegetation so that it continues to provide same level of screening in the future as it does now? Because one of the concerns I saw was, that in the future, if somebody decides to take that tree down, that opens up the possibility. So can a condition be added that says suitable screening, vegetative screening must be maintained to allow coverage of as it exists now?
Ron, you want to address that?
Yeah, so it's certainly possible, according to the town code, in granting a variance, the council can impose conditions that help mitigate the impact of the variance and preserve the intents and purposes of the code. So a vegetative screen can be a condition of approval. The council has done that in the past. There does need to be some specificity for enforcement purposes and for clarity down the road. The decisions are recorded in land records and need to properly inform people, subsequent owners in particular, of what the requirements are. So you might consider, for example, that there be installation of a vegetative screening that's maintained that is blank, at least 5 arborvitae trees that will grow to a maximum height of 15 feet, or something like that. Because it might not be clear 50 years from now whether the screening that exists then was the same than 50 years in the past, unless we have some sort of description.
One thing I think that the picture, we got another picture also in our records. I don't know where it is, but it was from the neighbors, and it shows, I guess, in winter when those leaves, when the trees are bare. So the visibility is much greater in the winter when they're not
Of
blocked.
course, they're not going to be using their deck in the winter either.
And there was some,
Let me look.
Any other questions in the meantime? Well,
maybe it was attached to her sent the letter, maybe.
Oh, look.
Attached to the email.
Yeah.
Oh, the email?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's fine.
Oh, okay. So there it is.
that's the picture. So
Yeah,
when the leaves are off the tree, will the arborvitae continue to grow?
They will, and those were planted as a condition of the previous variance approval.
Okay.
Next to the arborvitae, there's a fence, and then the maple tree is on the opposite side of the fence. And so there wasn't room to plant additional arborvitae without disrupting the growth of the maple tree.
Any other comments?
The only other comment I have is, we have to recognize that, future owners might use the deck differently. That's all. You know, they wouldn't necessarily, simply eat
Right.
breakfast. That's all.
Well, let me share my thoughts about it. Obviously, it's not comfortable to deal with a situation with two neighbors that are so concerned about an improvement, but we have to make a decision. My view is that this is a classic case that the variance process was set up for. This lot is extraordinarily unusual. Frankly, if this had been a regular rectangular lot, it wouldn't even be an issue because the side setback, where they're planning to put the deck would be so far removed from the side setback, there wouldn't be any problem whatsoever. And when our ordinances went into effect, the variance process was a critical facet of it because it was the only way that we're in fact able to take on board and consider extraordinary circumstances. And a lot that goes back to a single point in the backyard is an extraordinary circumstance. My personal view is that this is a overall very small enlargement of that deck. It will certainly add a great deal to the value of the use of that property. The backyard is extremely small and not really usable for much else. And yes, I am concerned and I respect the views of privacy, but we don't have an ordinance about privacy. We have an ordinance about setbacks. One of the main reasons for setbacks is to promote privacy, but it doesn't guarantee privacy. And my feeling here is that the extraordinary nature of the lot and the value that is gained by putting this deck in is the more important consideration. I will also speak personally. If anyone knows where I live, my wife and I live right on the corner of Maple and Pine Place. Right next to us is a house that is, I don't think, more than 15 feet from our house, and there is a second floor porch. It's been there since it was built 2 years after we moved. We accommodate it. We close our curtains for shades when we need to. No big deal. And we're not concerned about their prying eyes coming into our property. And we have a second floor porch, and I don't think they're concerned about our prying eyes in their property. I don't mean to belittle the concern because it's a real concern, but we have to judge how the concern can be mitigated. And where to the extent the concern remains a concern, which I guess it would in the wintertime, it doesn't seem to be a summertime or fall issue, but it would be a wintertime issue. It seems to me that there's a relatively easy way for the party that's concerned about this to address that concern. Whereas what would otherwise be the case is to deny the use of this space, really the backyard, for what I feel is a very legitimate purpose and one which would never even arise but for the fact that this is the extraordinarily shaped lot. So my personal view is to support this variance. I think you've made a very good point, Rich, that we ought to put a condition that requires screening, which is, I would say, I don't know quite how to translate this into words, and maybe we have to work on this, but comparable to today, so that we don't find a situation where someone comes and clear cuts the arborvitae in the future and says, I put in a couple of scrawny trees and that's it. So we do have to have standards. And I think we have to think about what that should look like. And maybe, Ron, you can help us.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So in 2016, oh, sorry.
Go, please, go ahead.
In 2016, in connection with the prior variance, the town required a planting plan. And I'm wondering if is there a written planting plan that we could look at tonight and perhaps modify, Mr. Walton?
There is one, but I don't have it available tonight. But I can certainly.
Well, I think what we'd be looking for is the maintenance of the current level of screening. I don't know how tightly that has to be defined, and maybe we have to find the words to memorialize that. But one could imagine a circumstance where that tree becomes diseased and has to be taken down. We would then want additional arborvitae to be planted, and with the expectation they will also grow to be 15 to 20 feet. So I think we have to find the words, but I'm reluctant to try to sculpt them tonight, off the top of our heads. So I think we ought to make a sense that we want wording that will require in perpetuity that the screening be at least at the level that it currently is. We have to find the words to properly convey that.
Yes, and so there's actually already a condition in place with respect to the prior variance, and that condition remains in force in perpetuity.
Does that condition say?
That says the applicants shall install and maintain vegetative screening along the east property line in accordance with a planting plan approved by the town. Before the town manager issues a building permit for the construction, a planting plan shall be prepared in consultation with the adjoining neighbors and the town arborist as to the location, species, size at installation, and number of trees or plantings to be installed. So once that plan was approved, it became a condition of the prior variance, and that planting plan has to be maintained.
Okay,
So it
good.
appears
So
the question is,
there.
does that planting plan need to be modified?
Okay, good. All right. All right. Any other comments?
You go. Carla.
I just want to agree and just thank you, Barney, for talking about the variance process. Because, I also look at the geometry of this lot and find it extraordinarily complicated. And I think actually, as I've looked at this sort of more carefully, on the west side, the structure is in line with the existing building, the house itself. And then on the, I guess, northeast side, there's also a part of the house that's a certain distance from the properties to the northeast. And this, the very northeast corner of this, it appears to me to be at the same setback distance, which, as we've all said, or some of us have said, is generous compared to other parts of the town where there are rectangular lots. I too have a home where the patio is at the lower level and we don't have a deck. We actually explored a deck, but having to go sort of through your house out to the patio on the lower level is a very difficult thing to do. So I think this will be very functional, and it seems reasonably distant from other properties. So, and I guess one of the questions, so I support this variance, and one of the questions I have to the council is whether we should ask the land use committee to examine these. I mean, I know it's very difficult to sort of come up with these setback requirements for unusual properties, and maybe the variance process is the best way to handle it. Do the best we can, and then we know we can't cover everything. But it just seems to me that because of the rather large front property dimension, we have side setbacks that are more generous than in other parts of the town, and yet the lot itself goes to a point at the end. So it just seems not too stringent, I guess, for this. So I support this.
Any other comments?
I do have a comment. And I guess, we've heard from the neighbor who is concerned about their experience. And also, I guess we should just ask ourselves, is there going to be some adverse impact on their home value? Because you mentioned it will add value to the deck home, but will it take some value away from the other home? I feel like I would like to see if there's any other kind of mitigation besides the plants, because I know in the email there was talk of having a screen on one side, just something that would allay those concerns, like some kind of, like one of the walls of the deck, or not walls, but like some kind of something on the deck, so that, anyway, that was just my thought, to somehow mitigate a little more that privacy concern. Especially since also I think we're talking about it as a side setback, but in some ways it's functioning as a rear setback, and the rear setback distance minimum is 20 feet. So that's just a thought.
Rich?
Yeah, as I thought about this, I think it's a balancing act here. On the one hand, the homeowner should be able to use their home in a way which is comfortable for them to use it. The other issue was the privacy issue. And I was thinking about all the rest of the town where indeed almost, at least in my house, I have the same kind of condition that Barney has. I look right out, about 30 feet away is my neighbor's bedroom. Well, they came in, they remodeled their house and put the bedroom up and it was fine. It's a beautiful house now. My responsibility is to maintain my privacy. I have shades. And so when I'm in my bedroom and I don't want them to look in, I lower the shades. So there's a real simple privacy function that I can carry out to continue to have additional mitigations put on this homeowner so that it's impossible for anybody that's on that deck to see anybody else in a neighbor is not prudent to me. That we shouldn't be doing that. So we've got an existing condition that says there has to be screening maintained on that side of the property. This is a benefit to this homeowner to go from a 6x6 useless appendage to have something that they can enjoy their dinners in the summertime with. I doubt they're going to be using it in the middle of the winter to eat, so that the screening is even less of a problem in the winter. So I would, that being said, I would support the variance as well.
Okay. Any other comments? Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the variance.
Is there a second? Carla, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm abstaining.
Okay, that's fine.
You can.
All right. The vote is 4 in favor, 1 is abstained. The variance passes. Okay, thank you very much. We do take these seriously. We know how important they are to the families that are engaged with them. Okay, we now go to council discussions. A was the 2026 housing bills. We know that the Silver and Starter Homes Act was not brought forth and considered by either the Senate or the House committee, so it died. Ron, though, if you have any further updates on any other housing bills that we should be aware of?
So the gutted Bambi Act, as you know, is technically still alive, but today's the final day, so I don't think it's going to pass. I think we dodged a bullet this year, but we need to keep an eye on things and be prepared to act next year. We need to keep an eye on the bill sponsored by Senator Wallstreicher, Bring Back Main Street Act, although not so much for the town of Chevy Chase because you don't have any commercial properties. But yeah, in a nutshell, I dodged a very deadly bullet this year, but I suspect we'll have to fight again next year as well.
Right. One thing I'd like to raise with my colleagues, I think one of the things we've really taken on board this year is the Maryland Municipal League and their activities. I want to report that we will be having a follow-up call with Teresa Coons, the CEO of the MML, at the end of this month. 10 communities that sent a further letter in accordance with our previous discussion in the council, very concerned with the degree to which staff undertook standalone negotiations with the state on this bill without consultation with any elected officials. So we'll have that conversation on April 29th. Also, as of the April 30th is the deadline for applications for anybody who wishes to serve on one of the committees. And I'm thinking of putting in an application to apply to serve on the legislative committee for next year. Joy White was on it 2 years ago and found it very valuable. Irene Lane tried very hard to get on it last year, but was not accepted. And instead, for reasons that were never made clear, 2 people from Gaithersburg were both put on the legislative committee. So Montgomery County representatives were both from the same municipality, which none of us really understood or thought was particularly fair. Anyway, I'm interested in doing that and hope you guys would be okay with it. I don't know whether I'll be accepted or not, but clearly the legislative committee of the MML is the right place to actually influence MML and their policies. And I'll say not only was I very concerned about their lack of engagement with municipal leaders during several months before the bill was dropped in January, but also when finally the MML submitted amendments that were recommended, some of them were just really silly and made no sense at all. It went to great lengths to define exactly what a townhome was, but, for example, never considered allowing duplexes, but not townhomes. I mean, there's the kinds of things that we would have naturally wanted to have a serious discussion about and might have found acceptable were never even put on the table. And instead, they focus on things that seemed rather irrelevant. So in any event, I think that committee is a place to try to affect something, and I'm willing to make that effort. So, all right, with that, let's move on to B, the introduction of a resolution prohibit parking on certain sections of Rosemary Street. Any discussions, or how do you feel about the draft ordinance that we would be setting up for a public hearing in May? Any comments? We're all set to do that?
So, yeah.
Okay. The one thing that I'd like to comment on is well, it's all been, go ahead, Dave. Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, there were 2 public outreach sessions that the Public Services Committee held, one in the fall and one in February, where neighbors were invited to come in and provide feedback on just generally the situation on the street. And then in February specifically to, I guess, this proposal. So the council and the town has not sent out anything prior to, I guess, the council's decision to proceed in a public hearing. There will be notices that go out, but the Public Services Committee has tried to be engaged with the residents on the block.
Yes, exactly. So all we'd be doing tonight is approving. Right. Okay. Do you want to go to the, we're just discussing it. No worries. You will have your chance to speak at the public hearing next month. The one thing I would like to raise is that in my mind, it's not part of the resolution, which is only focused on taking out the parking spaces on Rosemary near the school and the other spot back up at the hydrant. But there'd also been discussion from the PSC to recommend that we actually draw lines to indicate the parking spaces on Rosemary and Stanford, and also around the circle. And my personal view is that it is not necessary. I don't even think it's desirable to mark out the spots for parking on Rosemary and Stanford. Just not necessary. And some of the residents have opposed it, and I see no reason why we need to have it.
Or the circle?
Well, the circle, I think, actually does make sense because it makes very clear to everybody exactly where they can park, because there are several places in the circle where they cannot. Also, one of the homeowners requested that there be space left in front of their house so they can get out. And also, I think it encourages better parking, both full utilization of the space and also making sure the cars are right up against the curb. So I think marking it in the circle makes sense, but I do not support marking it on Rosemary and Stanford. Now, that's not part of this resolution, but, and Todd, I don't know how do we want to handle that recommendation? Is that...
Dave, didn't we talk about this? We talked about this again at the last PSC meeting. And my recollection is that they were comfortable with not having the parking on the streets, but keeping it on the circle.
Yeah, I
That
think
was my recollection.
Yeah, I think if the residents object to marking the spaces next to the triangle, I don't think there's any reason to do that or any need to do it. I know that the one resident on the circle, is very strongly supportive of making sure that his lead walk is clear. And the spacing wise, we can actually clear the other lead walk as well. So at least apply that consistently across it. But seems like there's no need to proceed.
How will that be resolved? How will we take forward that discussion regarding the strike?
Barney, in my opinion, you have two options. You can either decide to not proceed with the striping around Rosemary Triangle, or you can take the resolution and this proposal to stripe spaces to a public hearing in May.
Yeah, we don't need a public hearing for striping.
Yeah, I
You don't need one unless you feel that you want to hear from residents about the
And I
pros and
think
cons.
we addressed the concerns of I think the PSC adequately addressed the concerns of the residents, and they agreed essentially to what you're saying.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I don't
Then
think
you can decide not to proceed with the striping and hold a public hearing solely on the resolution in May.
Well, but right, in regard to striping, we can simply agree ourselves, and we'll, as administrative matter, we'd recommend that you stripe the circle.
The scope, yes, exactly. You can do
I would probably include that as part of the public hearing notice, even though it's not
Yes, I
technically a
think-
parking
right,
restriction
but
that requires a public
That's a
hearing.
good point.
Just so there's,
So that people can speak to it if they wish to.
sure.
But we would be then essentially we're voting on the restriction of parking. And then we would also take a separate decision about striping the circle if we wanted to.
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry, this is please go ahead and ask the question.
I see there's a public hearing on removing parking places. Will that be combined with adding parking permits? Because if you remove something, you're going to affect all the neighbors.
Okay,
around
you can speak to that if you wish at the public hearing, but the public hearing is solely on the question of removing the parking. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, but
There already is parking restriction.
right. But let me address this
Sure.
here. One of the things that when we met with the residents, the addition of no parking, you can submit that as a neighbor, as a group. So, yeah, there's a process that you go through and do it. And that's where we left it for the residents. If you,
American process, state law or something?
No,
No.
in order to implement permit parking, there
Parking.
needs to be a petition of the residents on the block. And I know that Sanella, who lives a few doors down from you, has circulated a petition and we started to get some responses.
May I recommend that perhaps tomorrow you can
Yep.
get in touch with Dave and follow up with him and he'd be happy to address your other questions? Great. Okay.
Perfect.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we will introduce that resolution for next month. We will also inform the residents that we intend to support the striping just around the circle, but not on Rosemary or. Do we need a motion?
Yes, you do.
Oh, we do. Second?
your turn.
A second.
All in favor? Okay. We will have a public hearing in mid-May. The third is an introduction of an ordinance to amend front yard hedge regulations. We discussed this last time. Carla, do you want to say a few words about it?
Oh, I just think this is a common sense adjustment to our code. The situation that brought this to our attention was the proposed installation of a hedge on a property that was depressed from either public sidewalk. And so what we had in terms of where you measure the 6 feet in height really disadvantaged this proposed planting. And, what you see in the proposal here is to measure that 6 feet from the higher elevation of the ground where the hedge is placed or the nearest public sidewalk. So I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
And be happy to make a motion to
Please do. Go ahead.
send it forward.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We'll have that public hearing as well. And then on item D, the discussion and possible adoption of amended subdivision standards. Ron, could you walk us through that, please?
Yes, certainly. So under state law, the planning board has exclusive jurisdiction to review and approve subdivision applications. However, municipal governments within the regional district have a right of mandatory referral and can submit a recommendation to the planning board on whether a subdivision application should be approved or not. And that state law provides that in exercising that authority, we have to have some criteria to apply, and the criteria needs to be based on the state criteria found in the county code with respect to subdivisions. So the town does have on the books a protocol document and a list of steps to take for subdivision review and the criteria. And given that the county zoning rules have changed and authorized workforce housing in residential zones, including the town, Dave and I thought it appropriate to revisit the criteria and make amendments. And so the amendments that are proposed to the existing subdivision review criteria are to point out that with respect to workforce housing zoning changes, we'll also consider the new factors in the county code with respect to that type of development.
Do you want to, here's the revised language. Sometimes printing it out.
Yes.
Yes, and so, yeah, beginning at page 50 of the meeting packet, there's a memo from me where, I explain the changes. And then if you scroll down to page 55, you'll see a red line version showing the changes that we're going to make. So the last time we adopted these standards, the mandatory referral provision was located in Article 28 of the Maryland Code. It's now in the land use article of the Maryland Code. So we're correcting that in the first line. Then in the third paragraph, we expand on what it means for a resulting subdivided lot to be compatible with the town. And we're adding that we're also going to consider dimensions and road access in addition to the existing criteria of street frontage alignment. And pointing out that with respect to optional method workforce housing development, we can also consider whether the dimensions of a lot are able to accommodate the proposed building and other infrastructure, including stormwater, drainage, and parking and access drives. And then at the bottom of the document, there's just a note to remind us in the future that with respect to workforce housing development, flag lots can't be approved, and the assemblage of more than 3 eligible lots abutting a corridor cannot be combined to create a workforce housing project. So that's just in there to remind us of that code provision. And those are the proposed edits.
Ron, let me ask this question.
Yes.
We spent a lot of time on this when the workforce housing legislation was worked on. And we all agreed that it was fine to combine some lots, but we had to have some limitation to it. And we proposed a limitation that was a little bit less, but ultimately it came out with 23,000. In inserting that we're in part of our review, which would simply be our ability to present a position to the planning board, right? I mean, that's all we're talking about here. We have no actual authority. We're simply talking about the things that we might consider if we were to intervene and want to make some statement about some subdivision creation to the planning board. Is that correct?
Correct. And yeah, I should have stated previously, we can submit a recommendation. If we recommend against approval, it doesn't mean the project is defeated. It just triggers a supermajority approval requirement by the planning board.
I see. Okay.
They can override our recommendation with a supermajority vote.
Right. That's what okay. But it requires a supermajority, which on the planning board, they have 5. What does supermajority mean?
Is there 5 or 9?
4 instead of 3?
Let me see. There might be 9 members. Let me check that right now. But if it's 5, it would be 4 instead of 3.
Okay. But let me ask, when we're adding that we're concerned about the dimensions, are you contemplating that even though explicitly in the code, a lot could be as large as 23,000, we might complain if it's aggregated and it's 20,000. I'm trying to get a sense of what are we what are we trying to enlarge or modify in terms of what we'd be speaking to? Or does it really not matter very much anyway?
So, I mean, obviously it depends on what we're looking at, but one example might be with respect to dimensions. Most of our lots are rectangular in shape, but
Right.
what if an assemblage results in a very long and narrow lot assemblage that significantly impacts the character based on the proximity of other residential lots? That might be something we could comment on.
Go ahead, please, Rich.
Yeah, I was interested in your subdivision review protocol, that your Exhibit B,
Yes.
where you kind of set forth the process and what we would use in the town. Where does that get does that get codified anywhere? Or is that just
That's a summary of the process required by state law. So
Okay,
state law requires us to move pretty quickly, 45 days. And under that state process, we have to have a public hearing. We have to have a transcript of that public hearing to submit along with our recommendation. And so the protocol document just helps us conform to that requirement and apprises us of all the deadlines as we go through.
I like it a lot because it gives us the protocol and the timeline to do it. My question is that going to become part of our standard operating procedures?
So Rich, it is already. The council in March of 2010 approved the subdivision standards and subdivision review protocol. This is just the standards. So it's been in place since 2010.
Yes.
2010. Okay.
So tonight we're not altering the timeline schedule. Tonight we would just be altering the criteria. But I included the timeline document in the package just to give you.
It was very useful. It's very helpful, actually.
Had the word size, shape, and width previously that were there, and we're modifying the word alignment? I'm sorry, in the red line version.
We're adding road access and.
Yes, but ahead of that, I see size, shape, and width are in black type, not red type. So they must have been there previously.
Yes.
What were they modifying? Alignment?
No, they weren't. I think they were just alignment.
Let me pull up the other one to make sure that I don't have a wrong.
Oh, so dimensions, it's not really adding anything anyway. I mean, you're defining dimensions, but if previously size, shape, and width were already in the list before, essentially dimensions were already anyway.
No, I see your point, and I wonder if I've colorized the wrong word.
Maybe
Okay. Oh, I see. So in the existing version, it says street frontage, comma, alignment, comma, size, comma, shape, comma, width.
Yeah, so fair enough. Then all you're doing is putting in a definition of dimensions.
Right.
The things that define dimensions are already in there already. So there really isn't anything new on that point. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Anyway, what do we need to do with this tonight? Just approve it?
Yes.
Just approve it.
By motion, please.
Okay. Any discussion? Motion?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, let's go on to E, the new E, which is the ADA compliance with the gate. What I wanted to raise here was, first of all, I'm really grateful. I will shout out to Susanna Montezumoa, who raised this issue regarding the ADA compliance. And thank you, Todd and John Lloyd, for doing the deep dive research to realize that, in fact, we are not ADA compliant with that gate and what it will take to be ADA compliant. But I thought to ventilate the issue fully, because some other residents had raised the issue of the gate, And some had said, why don't we just get rid of the gate? Which obviously would be an alternative way to make it ADA compliant. We know that one family in particular that's right there at the edge of Thornapple before the path feel very strongly that that gate is very important for safety. I will share with you that that is my personal view as well. Having used that gate in that path all the time, I think it does slow down traffic. So I would not be, but I wanted to make sure, not be in favor of eliminating, but before voting or approving what would be a $20,000 expenditure to make the gate ADA compliant, I at least wanted to ventilate with everybody here whether we're comfortable with that or whether any of you would prefer or at least have a discussion about the prospect of removing the gate, which is about the only other thing we can do. So I at least just wanted to raise this.
I want to clarify, are we talking about utilizing the same gate, just modifying it?
That's correct. Yes. The scope of John's.
Extend the sides and.
Yeah, so it's the same gate. We'll modify it with a handle and make sure that the pressures to open and close are right. So the gate, it's really just about relocation of the gate.
It's relocating the hinge side of the gate from left
side of the gate,
right side, raising the gate 2 inches from 2 to 4 inches to meet handle height requirements, installing a U-shaped handle on the pool side of the gate close to the strike, constructing a stone retaining wall perpendicular to and flush with the end of the current wall.
The retaining wall expansion
It's
area.
just really
That's what's going to
what
cost
it
more
is.
money.
Yeah.
We have to also cover the bottom 10 inches of the gate with a smooth surface on both sides of the gate. I guess we'll use plexiglass. It's not going to be aesthetically pleasing.
And
We
you
have
just
to raise it.
put two metal 10-inch panels on down there. It doesn't need to be clear, does it?
We would normally do a clear, so there's sight lines, and it's aesthetically more pleasing than a metal opaque, screen, if you will. We also have to modify the retaining walls to create lay-by areas for wheelchairs to get by.
Yeah, that's what I think will cost the most money.
And that's going to cost the most, yeah. And then we have to make sure the gate has a pull force of less than 5 foot-pounds and a close speed of greater than 5 seconds. And that's what the retaining walls is probably the most costly element of this redesign.
We visited that recently with the Ridge Street sidewalk, so we have a sense of that.
Right.
Any other comments?
My comment is only a request, and that is, could you go over the options again? Because I thought there were, I think, 2 options, and then there was a third option.
Sure. It's modifying the existing gate to make it ADA compliant, removing the gate, or finding alternatives other than this existing gate to put in that might be less costly and won't require modifying the retaining walls, but likely it will require modifying the retaining walls in any event. But I would have to retain a landscape architect with ADA accessibility experience in order to figure out what alternatives are other than the existing gate and modifying the existing gate to make it ADA compliant. And so it could be simply a swing gate that swings both ways. There are some other alternatives that might be feasible, but I can't opine on those simply because I have no idea. We consulted with ADA compliance officials and experts to determine how to modify the existing gate. That was the scope of what our analysis was, how to modify existing conditions. But if we want to find alternatives, bollards, swing gates, things like that, we could retain a landscape architect with, like I said, with ADA accessibility experience to figure out what alternatives are. That might be less expensive and more accessible, but we'd have to go through a process to do that.
My feelings on that, by the time we hire a landscape architect and you buy the new equipment, you're going to spend $20,000.
And we won't have
a gate, right? New gate. That won't be built yet. Right.
Likely so.
Thank you.
Any other comments? It just seems like an extraordinary amount of money to do this, but I mean, when you describe all the things that are involved, it adds up.
And we have no choice. We have to comply
Yeah,
with.
no,
ADA law.
I'm completely in favor of complying with ADA. Don't misunderstand me in any way. It just seems like an extraordinary amount of money to be able to do that. And,
It's the
I mean,
stonework is
the
going
other alternative is to remove the gate and improve signage. We could always do that and try it.
I will just observe, how well have any of us ever seen a bicyclist observe the signage in this town?
Right.
Yeah, I'm just offering alternatives and options.
I understood.
I
Can I ask a question? I mean, have we looked at multiple bids to look at the cost of that?
We
Is
haven't
that
bid it
something we would
out.
do as process?
No, the only analysis we've done is how to change existing conditions to make it ADA compliant. We haven't done a bid process. We haven't done a request for proposal. We haven't done any of that. We just wanted to find what we need to do with existing conditions to make it ADA compliant.
So the $20,000 is based on what?
How to modify existing conditions to make it ADA compliant.
It's your estimate at the
It's
moment.
your
Yeah, the
estimate. It's your estimate, right?
It's our guesstimate.
Yeah.
Carla?
Just thinking about other situations that need to be ADA compliant and are not as elaborate as what we're talking about here. So I think about the tennis courts right next to, I know they're county facility, but it's a simple, whatever you call those things, the gate, the gate itself is just latch. A little latch just opens up and closes. If it's set at a height that is accessible, does that suffice? I think we can imagine putting springs on it. It just seems to me there's got to be a simpler solution than spending $20,000 to make that thing accessible. I'm sorry.
It's not really.
There has to be room to get to that latch though, so.
Yeah, and I
wheelchairs
can't
turn
actually.
sideways.
Yeah, and I can't speak to whether county facilities are ADA compliant. The county facilities, the county had to stand up an ADA compliance board because the DOJ came after it for not having any facilities that were ADA compliant. And so they're retrofitting all of their facilities now. So it may not be ADA compliant.
Well, I think it's worth a look. I mean, whether it's small playgrounds or play areas that are fenced in, same thing in schools, where you have a fence with a gate and a latch. It seems to me that if it's at the right height and you don't have to exert a lot of force to open or close it, it can, that is likely accessible. I just think we need to look at it.
It's not the gate. The gate, the gate's not the accessible problem. The problem is that the access to the gate has to be made accessible. So you've got to increase, you have to have a turnaround ability for a wheelchair essentially to turn around in the space, which is why we have to take the gate. That's why we have to take the stone wall out. So the gate's not, the gate's a fixed cost for us. It's already there. They're just talking about modifying it.
Okay, well, we don't need to
you-
belabor it further. I'll take a look and I'll give some suggestions to Dave if anything comes to mind, but it just strikes me as an extraordinary amount of money. And I'm fully supportive of making it ADA compliant.
I won't find any of us disagreeing that $20,000 to solve this is not cheap.
Yeah.
As soon as we realize that, as you said, Rich, that you have to widen the space so a wheelchair can go sideways.
Yeah.
That's what requires the widening of the space. Because,
yeah.
Okay. I think you have a consensus to go ahead. Try to find a least cost attractive way to make it ADA compliant. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. On any other business for tonight from anybody?
No.
Rich?
I do have one. I mean,
Yeah.
we had the permit, the lady raised the issues of permit. We ought to refer that to the PSC.
Yes,
to
I think
let
for
them
raising
look-
that. I think
let
we
them
should.
Look at
I
that.
think in the spirit of that too, Allison Fox made I thought, interesting thought, which is to separate issuing the parking permits from the restrictions on one's own street.
Mhm.
And I never thought about that. I'd always put the two together. So I'd always said to myself, because I happen to live on a block which is 1 block away from where there's permitted parking. And I've always said, I'm happy not to have the permit because I don't want to hassle getting permits and stickers and the passes for people who visit us. And if it means that I can't park on 46th Street, well, that's okay. That's not such a big deal to me.
Yeah.
But what she seemed to be implying was the thought that I could still have a sticker, so I could park on 46th Street, but there would not be restrictions as such on my own street. But hey, we'll leave that aside. I think you're correct.
Yeah, we need to
Ask the Public Services Committee to look at it as an issue for next year.
And just to summarize her issues, it's about public access to a public facility.
Right.
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 And everybody in the town ought to have access to the street, right, to parking on the street. And it's not that way now with the parking permits. The parking permit, with a long time, a lot of the thought had gone into, how you structure the parking permit program. And if you read your permit when you get it, you're supposed to only park in the vicinity of your home.
Right. That's right.
Okay. So we really were trying to restrict it so that people on one side of the town couldn't go. You wouldn't have the people on the side away from Wisconsin Avenue parking over on Wisconsin Avenue, taking all the spaces when they want to go to the shopping center or do whatever over there. So again, it was trying to balance it. So, but they need to think about it.
They need to think about it. And I think and we also certainly know that the people who live on 45th and 46th Street are going to be very concerned because they feel that people abuse, from their perspective, abuse the purpose, which is in fact to try to assure more spaces on the block where you live, not to give you extra options of parking elsewhere in town. So, okay, but yes, thank you. I appreciate you raising it with Howard. One other thing I wanted to mention, which has to do with the Purple Line. I will not be able to make the CAT meeting, which is coming up on the 23rd, but Carlo will be standing in for us. And Carlo, I think I want to say another word about something that Todd touched on at the outset. We could have a classic screw up here between the county and the Purple Line people. It is obvious to all of us how beneficial it would be to open up the Capitol Crescent Trail now. Frankly, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, they've basically finished all construction in this area. They're stringing wires, but they don't need the trail for that. But in any event, we originally told that they could open up the trail as of June or sometime this summer, essentially a year and a half before formal commercial operation. But we do know, and Todd referred to this correctly, that there is tension on this point, though maybe, Todd, you're thinking they might be making some kind of headway, but in the past anyway, there's been tension where the county has said, we don't want to take legal responsibility when you guys might still have any kind of reason to come onto the trail, which you might need to anytime before this commercial operation. So if the trail is opened, we're willing to maintain it, but we don't want to take legal responsibility for it. Meanwhile, the Purple Line is saying that's nonsense. If the trail is open to the public, we are not taking any more responsibility. So that was a behind the scenes to us debate that obviously has been going on. Now, maybe, Todd, your sense is that there may be some breakthrough there. But what I wanted to ask is that Carlo at the CAT meeting, could you please raise this topic and try to get some really clear determination on when they will open up that trail. And if they fuss around and aren't willing to give you a date, why are they not willing to give you a date? What is the issue? And try to ventilate and expose what really seems to be an incredibly stupid bureaucratic hangup to opening up something which would be immensely beneficial to all the residents. And we really want to open it up quickly. So anyway, if you could raise the flag on that.
I will gladly raise that. I'm wondering if the other party who's involved in this decision is part of the CAT meeting regularly, whether they'll speak up. Is it anybody from
county?
It's county transportation, right?
County is not going to speak up, so you're only going to hear the Purple Line side of it, but at least.
Well, which I would imagine they say we'd be happy to turn it over to the county as soon as they're ready to accept it.
Yeah.
But I'll bring it up.
Yeah, we just don't want some bureaucratic legalistic hangup that basically, the worst case would be they don't reach an agreement and the trail just stays shut all the way until December of 2027.
Right.
Or later, because it may, it's still an estimated, when it goes operational.
Exactly. That's their current estimate. You'll hear whether they're still sticking to that or
And
not.
did Todd need any direction about the lamp shading?
Yeah, Todd described that earlier.
He described it, but we didn't say, yeah, let's go ahead with the cheaper way to shield the light rather than replacing the luminary and doing that. We're
fine.
agreed,
No, I'm not
right?
sure. I'm not sure if it's cheaper, but it's an alternative that they're speccing out. So once they do that, I can share it with the council and determine how we want to proceed. He thinks, Dan Norman from PLTP thinks that these lampshades, for lack of a better characterization, that are attached to the pole and extend up and cover the back of the luminaire would be more effective and are probably a lot easier to implement than replacing out full luminaires with shields that only provide a pattern diffusion. So he's looking into that. He's getting his engineers on board. You don't have to make a decision right now. I think he's speccing it out, and I can certainly show the council what he will produce, and we can make a decision from there.
I do.
Sure.
No, when you're done.
Okay. There's one other sidebar benefit or side benefit to this latest idea, which is there are a couple of luminaires which are across the bridge, that is to say, on the north side. And some residents had been concerned about them. I had pointed out to Todd that it was important for some light to come off the south side of those lamps because there's that very narrow path that is it's a pedestrian path that does a
Switchback.
reverse turn off the CCT to go back underneath the tunnel. And I imagine that light on that post is both for the CCT and for that path. So putting in this kind of shield that's been described could illuminate that lower path while still blocking light from going into neighbors. And that would be important just intrinsically, but also we have to get approval from the county for these changes. And if we don't deal with that particular issue, they might object to having that screening. So this opens up potentially a way to accomplish that. Okay, anything else?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did think, in view of the Climate and Environment Committee's plan to present information on single stream and double stream recycling, I just wondered if you have any thoughts about information that you'd like to see included that would inform their presentation. I mean, I know they have some things, but I think, Rich, you said
Cost comparisons.
cost comparisons.
And effectiveness. It's wonderful to have a bunch of direct, instructions, but compliance and how things are actually sorted.
Yeah, and there's an sure there's something about this. I don't know how to describe it for them, but we have a lot of elderly folks in this town that making them carry their bins to the curb presents a real physical problem for them. And so they need to, they need to do. We do have some demographic data, I think, about the age of our community. We may be able to derive it from tax data or something, but we do have, we can get, they need to, it's not just effectiveness, it's the impact, residential impact.
I've been following this discussion on the town listserv, and that has been raised. And I think that, Tamara, to your point, it would be helpful for the committee to address that point.
Okay.
I'll add one other, which is presumably if those who are in favor of going to dual stream believe that it'll lead to more, that whatever is put into recycling a higher percentage will actually be recycled. We ought to have some idea of what that delta is. If it's only a few percentage points, it's one thing. If it's a huge difference, it's something else. But we ought to get some sense of what they think we're really be gaining by potentially taking on a different system. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, and one other thing, I mentioned this to Tamara, that if they've come up with new guidelines for what can be recycled, we ought to have a town crier on that, not just put it on the website.
Todd, would that be possible to take that flyer that you uploaded to their, to the trash and recycling?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Have a town
Thank
crier,
you.
and then the town crier then gets put back on the listserv, and then we can re-put it on the town crier, and put it back on the listserv, and eventually, a third of the town will know about it. Okay, is there anything else? I think we're done. All right, thank you all very much. Good night.
Good night.